What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my unit review and builds guide for Ganglot, Ascended Young Tiki, Hardin, Nyna, Elice, and Matthis. So Ganglot is the new rearmed hero who has got Arcane Downfall as the Arcane Axe. And this weapon gives you minus on special cooldown and plus 5 to all of your stats. It also provides you with follow-up negation, so that can be pretty good defensively. And then it can also provide you with special cooldown acceleration per attack on both the enemy's hits and your own hits. So this allows you to retaliate back with 2 cooldown specials like Iceberg and Bonfire. And finally you can heal 7 HP per hit in the combat. So overall this weapon is not really as good as Arcane Elutnir or even Arcane Grima I would say, but still it can definitely help many of the Axe units. And Ganglot also comes with Quick Riposte 4 as a new tier 4 skill. So now the threshold of Quick Riposte is much better at 25% HP, so you can get the Garunteed Follow Up attack, and you can also get 25% damage reduction on foe's first attack. So this is a pretty decent skill for the slower units, but Slot B is definitely competitive, and Quick Riposte 4 is not some like insanely good skill, but I guess if you don't really have too many options and if you're very slow, then this could definitely help you get the Guaranteed Follow Up attack and also the damage reduction, which in many cases, many of the classes don't really have the skills to get the damage reduction. She also has Distant Stance and Joint Distant Guard in her base kit to go well with her mixed bulk, and looking at her stats, she does have base 44 attack and base 38 speed. Now, like I said, this arcane weapon is not really as good as the previous two ones that we have got, and the main problem that arises for Ganglot is that she doesn't have a preferred skill, which means that she is going to be running into the problem where she's going to be competing with other Axe units who can literally just copy everything from her base kit and pretty much function that way. And that can even be grant her battle units like Calic and a 3-star 4-star unit like Balthus. So both of these are going to be performing pretty similar to a plus 10 Ganglot. Balthus has pretty similar attack and physical bulk, and he does have 5 less speed but does have more HP. And Calic does have pretty similar speed to Ganglot, but does not really have as much raw defense. But again, he also has more HP than Ganglot. So unfortunately, because of not having a preferred skill, she's not really able to stand out too much despite being a modern unit. She can definitely function well at like low merges or like low investment because her base kit is already good. But in the long term, she's not really going to be standing out too much, and she's pretty much going to be watered down as a fodder because of having an arcane weapon and also some really good skills. Now even if you fodder a rearmed hero, they're not going to be disappearing, and you can definitely fodder her for Arcane Downfall or even Quick Riposte 4, which is a new skill. Quick Riposte 4 is going to be useful with slower users of Arcane Downfall like Balthus. So again, Balthus can literally copy the entire kit of Ganglot and function similarly. You can also give this to slower units like Sophia for example, who don't really have access to damage reduction, and as it is being a range flyer, they don't really have too many options. You can also pair this up with flat damage reduction in Har and Ninja Shirshay's weapon. So what will happen is that the damage reduction which you get out of Quick Riposte 4 is actually gonna get added before the flat damage reduction, and then whatever damage is remaining, your flat damage reduction is gonna be active on that. And because these units have like dual phase Brave weapon, they can easily tank the first hit from the enemy, and with the support of like Thor or Brave Lucina, they can retaliate back with Ignis and just kill the enemy and not really care about the double attack of the enemy. So this can be a pretty good skill on these units. And you can also run this on mages who don't really have access to damage reduction. Julius and Limstella do come to the mind. So Julius, if you are not really running a speedy build, then you can just go with Quick Riposte 4 for the damage reduction to stack on top of the Dragon Wall built into his weapon Refine. And Limstella is also going to be a pretty good user of this because they do get a lot of debuffs with their weapon, and you can pretty much be a very bulky green mage with Quick Riposte 4 and finish kill providing you the healing and also the true damage. You can also use this for arena scoring because it's a 300 SP slot B skill, but I wouldn't really recommend to go out of your way to have the skill for the arena scoring just yet. We're probably going to be getting even better skills, but if there's someone like, Flame Tribe Mordecai who is pretty slow and needs Quick Riposte, So because of having a preferred weapon and 300 SP passives, he can actually go ahead and score like a 195 BST unit. So this is only really necessary if you really care about arena that much. and most people don't really care, but it's an option, so I thought I would just mention it. I've already gone over extensively over the best users of Arcane Downfall in a completely different video, so you can check that out in the description right below that like button. And now let's move on to the builds of Ganglot. Because even if you're going to be foddering her, you can still use her because she's a rearmed hero. So you can try and just run Reposition and a Form Sacred Seal because her base kit is already pretty good. But if you want to invest a bit more into her, then she does appreciate the guard effect from something like a stand skill. And you can just run sturdy stance when you're just going to be dealing with the melee foes. You can also run Joint Drive Attack when you're not running Distant Counter. And Attack Smoke 4 is really not needed when you already have Follow Up Negation with Arcane Downfall. And keep in mind that you can refine these arcane weapons, so this is more of a specialized build for the melee matchups. And at max investment, you can definitely give her something like Attack Resistance Oath Force so that you can have the teleportation and still get the extra attack and resistance. You can also, make Ganglot into a speedy unit if you really want to at max investment. She doesn't really have very high base speed, but because Arcane Downfall does give you that +5 speed, and you can also speed refine it. So you can just stack up speed with attack speed finish, attack speed oath 4, and also using bonus doubler, and most preferably having some support like, Bludgeoning Eliwood providing you with the bonus doubler status effect as well, which will be stacking up with the bonus doubler Sacred Seal. So you can have more than 70 speed, which in my opinion is not really all that much in the modern times. Many of the, fast units can just reach 70 speed with their base kit at like +1 merge. So this is not the highest, but this is going to be helpful in stopping the follow-up attacks of many of the units that are going to be slower than you. And it also makes, better use out of null follow-up because she's going to be this fast. So if you're going to be max investing into her, then it could be an option. But again, she's not going to be like crazy fast because her base speed is not really all that high. Ascended Young Tiki, in my opinion, is the best unit out of this banner, and she's definitely the strongest one because of the weapon that she has got, and also the preferred Slotsy skill. So Awoken Breath provides her with -1 special cooldown, and it's also effective on dragons. And if she's within 3 spaces of an ally, then she can get +5 to all of her stats, also get +1 special cooldown per attack of both enemies' hits and her own attacks, and she also has the Dull All effect. So she does not really care about the enemy buffs and will be ignoring all of the visible buffs of the opponent. And then finally, she has the special decharging that we have seen on Brave Tiki first and then on Duoduma. And Ascended Young Tiki just robs Brave Tiki of that effect. And she's able to get that decharging depending on her in-combat resistance. So it's a resistance check, which means that speed resistance finish and speed resistance bulwark is actually a pretty good skill. And Ascended Young Tiki doesn't really have as high of a resistance like Duoduma or Brave Tiki, so she definitely needs to stack resistance so that she can get the decharging, and this allows her to be a pretty strong unit because she's not going to be affected by Deadeye or Lethality like many of the other units because of the decharging, and because she can ignore any of the visible buffs of the opponent, this definitely makes her a pretty good unit in Summoner Duels and also in Aether Raids. So just ignoring the foe's visible buffs while stacking up a lot of stats yourself with her weapon and Slotsy skill is going to be pretty good. She does come with Speed Resistance Bulwark, which is a new skill, and this is going to be useful on dragons like her who are fast. And the Bulwark skill does provide you the obstruct effect, so this is really good for performing as a frontliner in Summoner Duels, and also in Aether Raids Chaos where you can only use one save unit. So you can just pair her up with a far save tank and use the Bulwark skill to prevent the enemies from going past Tiki, unless of course they ran past. And she also has Speed Resistance Finish, which is rather niche skill, but Tiki definitely needs it because she is fast and also needs the resistance to get the decharging out of her weapon. And this does have good synergy with the special acceleration that she gets from her weapon, so she's able to retaliate back with icebergs, so that is going to be helpful in getting the true damage and getting the healing. And finally, she's got Altogether as her Slotsy skill, which is exclusive to her. So this has got Joint Drive Spectrum built into it, so Tiki can benefit out of this and also provide the support to her allies, which is definitely really good. She can get damage reduction against AoE specials up to 80%, depending on the allies within 2 spaces of her. So if there are 2 allies within 2 spaces of her, then she's going to be able to get the max 80% damage reduction against the AoE specials, which definitely makes her matchups, better against stuff like Legendary Lilina, Duo Thor, Spring Sonia, and so many of the other AoE units, which are definitely pretty popular in something like Summoner Duels. And if there's just one ally, then she can still get 40% damage reduction on the AoE special. Now, AoE specials are different from the regular attacks. She also gets the regular damage reduction on foes' regular attacks on their first attack. So this can go up to 40%, and this is definitely pretty helpful as a frontliner because she is fast to make use of null follow-up and stop the follow-up attacks, and also to stack up enough speed to not really get doubled by many of the very fast opponents. She also has base speed of 44 while also having super boon in it, and her resistance is base 36. So having a super boon in it is definitely going to be helping you with the decharging in her weapon. Her attack is also pretty good at base 42, and defense and HP is not the highest, but with the stats that she can stack and with the damage reduction, she's definitely going to be a pretty strong unit. So overall, Ascended Tiki ends up being a pretty good red infantry dragon. She's not someone like Halloween female Corrin, I don't think to that level, but still, she is going to be pretty solid as a frontliner in Summoner Duels S and also in Aether Raids Chaos. And the fact that she's a dragon, she is going to be able to have access to distant counter dragon Sacred Seal, so that is also going to be helping you take on the ranged matchups without really sacrificing her slot A skill. And the fact that her slot C gives her the damage reduction is really good, so you don't really have to go out of your way to run something like Dragon Wall, and you can still take the benefit out of the Bulwark skill. Tiki can stack up a lot of stats herself and not really care about the stacking of stats on the opponent by ignoring their visible buffs. So this makes her into a pretty good raid boss for something like Summoner Duels S, and at the same time a pretty good anti-raid boss unit in Summoner Duels. She can also work as a pretty good frontliner there, and like I said, in Aether Raids offense, she can also work, and if she's going to be doing well in those two game modes which are competitive, then she's also going to be doing really well in the in-game content. So if you want to fodder her for any of her skills, I think Speed Resistance Bulwark is definitely a lot better. Speed Resistance Finish is definitely a bit more niche, I would say. There are not many units who want speed and resistance at the same time, kind of like Tiki. And the Bulwark skill can actually be a pretty good thing for many of the speedy dragons. So you can give this to Halloween female Corrin. She can work as a pretty good frontliner because of having that damage reduction from her weapon, and both Adrift Corrins can also make pretty good use out of this weapon because of the damage reduction, and also the fact that they've got, special acceleration similar to Tiki, so they can just retaliate back with their specials and work pretty well with the skill. You can also run this with Arcane Grima actually, so that you can get 14 HP heals, because Arcane Grima does give you the post-combat healing just like the Bulwark skills. So that is going to be pretty helpful on a fast dragon that's running Arcane Grima. And because you're going to be healing up this much HP post-combat, you can even run Distant Pressure if they have enough resistance. If you want to run Tiki on a budget, then you can simply run Null Follow Up, and you can even run Distant Counter Dragon Sacred Seal. So Resistance Super Boon is something that I would recommend along with the Speed IV if you want to ascend an IV. And keep in mind that these kinds of ascended units can basically get a free ascended asset without using any kind of floret. So if you end up getting a plus resistance or plus speed IV Tiki, then you can just ascend the other stat. And that is going to be ideal with the decharging that you can get with her weapon, and it also improves her range matchups when you're using Distant Counter Dragon Sacred Seal. Here she is going to be missing out on the null follow-up, so you can actually run that in the slot B, or you could just provide her with the external null follow-up with Infantry Speed Tactic or Infantry null follow-up. And you can also run her in Summoner Duels as a frontliner, and you can actually use a damage reduction skill like Pavis. So this is really helpful because you can get the damage reduction on the first attack with all together, and then on the second attack you can get the damage reduction out of Pavis because you do have the special acceleration with your weapon. So Pavis becomes a 2 cooldown special, and then you can charge it up with her weapon on the second hit of the enemy. So this can definitely help you manage some of the big threats like Brave Seliph, for example, and she already ignores the visible buffs that Seliph gets out of his Slotsy skill, so that definitely makes it a lot easier. And something like this and just speed stacking and having the damage reduction special is going to be making her into a pretty solid frontliner with that Bulwark skill. You can also use her as a Summoner Duels as raid boss herself by using Distant Counter Dragon Sacred Seal, but keep in mind that you cannot really yeet her into the enemy lines too far away like many of the other dragons, because she does need to be within 2 spaces of her allies to get the stuff from her all together and get the damage reduction. So you can pretty much have her, with your allies and maybe support her with someone like Ledgering Eliwood, who can provide you with more stats, and you can just run Distant Counter Dragon because against many of the range units like AoE units, she's going to be doing a pretty amazing job, which are really common like Duo Thor and Spring Sonia. So that is definitely going to be working out in her favor. And you can definitely provide her with the external null follow-up so that the units who have got auto follow-up attack are not able to double her. And you can also use her in Aether Raids Chaos with a far save unit, or even use her with Distant Counter Dragon and, use her with a near save unit. Both things are possible, but if you're going to be using her for the melee matchups, then you can just use null follow-up Sacred Seal, which is going to be helping you a lot. And the fact that Tiki can ignore the visible buffs of the enemies is definitely going to be working out really well for these two competitive game modes. Finally, we also have Arena Tiki at max investment. So with the tier 4 slot B skill and Distant Counter Dragon Sacred Seal, she can score like a 205 BST unit, which is just, second to Duo Duma, who's the highest scoring arena unit in the game. So she's going to be scoring pretty well in Arena, and she can make use of Blue Flame because of the special charges that she can get out of her weapon. And in Arena, rally skills are very common, so again, ignoring the visible buffs of the enemies is again going to be helping you in another competitive game mode. Hardin this time is a Lance Cavalier with Coyote's Lance as his preferred weapon. This gives him -1 special cooldown, and if he's within 3 spaces of any kind of ally, then he can give himself and the cavalry allies within 3 spaces the +6 visible attack and speed buff, and also the player phase guaranteed follow-up attack. So the guaranteed follow-up attack is similar to that which you can get out of Naga and Future Vision 2, so it only works in the player phase, and he can also get +6 attack and speed in the combat, and reduces damage from foe's first attack by 40%. Finally, he has got a clash effect in his weapon, which can give him the true damage depending on the number of spaces moved by whoever initiated combat. Keep in mind that this effect, like the clash kill, is going to be counting the spaces moved even if you teleport. So overall, this weapon definitely makes Hardin into a pretty interesting Lance Cavalier, where he's not going to be hitting as hard as Brave Erika or does not have utility of Brave Crom, but he can still stand out because of the support that he provides with the guaranteed follow-up attack to the cavalry allies. And he can also give them the visible buff, and the range is pretty generous, which is within 3 spaces. And this can also help him pretty much not run flow skill, because if he's faster than the opponent, then this kind of guaranteed follow-up attack in the player phase kind of works like pseudo half null follow-up, so he can bypass the slower enemies who have follow-up negation. And that can go for the cavalry allies as well. The range cavalry units don't really have access to the flow skills, so this is a way for many of the faster range cavalry allies to pretty much bypass the follow-up negation effects, which are going to be pretty annoying for them. And this is also a way of making player phase of many slower cavaliers much better. So he could be used in Aether Raids defense with many of the cavaliers, and this is definitely going to be having really good interaction with Brattle Catria's brave attacks. He's also going to be useful in summoner duels, because if a map can allow cavalry units to dominate, then he's definitely going to be a pretty good support unit. And overall, when it comes to its stat spread, he is going to be quite offensive with that base 41 attack and also base 44 speed. And his physical bulk is definitely workable, especially with the damage reduction that he can get out of his weapon. He does have Surge Sparrow, which is going to be helping him in the player phase just heal up the HP, and attack speed Neotrace is going to be giving you that Canto and also the attack and speed debuff, which definitely helps Hardin a lot. But if you're a pure offensive unit, then speed defense Neotrace is definitely something you would want over attack speed Neotrace. So as a fodder, he can provide Surge Sparrow and the Neotrace at the same time, which is going to be pretty good for a lot of cavalry and flying units. You can just get Surge Sparrow 2 from a free-to-play unit like Winter Felix or Young Innes as a prerequisite, and then you can make the best effective use out of him for the fodder. So while he's not anything too insane, he's pretty solid with this kind of weapon. If you want to use Hardin on a budget, then you can simply give him Reposition and have a supportive skill like Drive Attack, or Goat Cavalry, or Ward Cavalry, or even Fortify Cavalry as a supportive skill. And you can just double down on the player phase and use Blade Session Sacred Seal. But if you want to use him in the mix phase, then Attack Speed Catch 4 is something that you could run on him. And he already gets the speed buff, so Speed Smoke 4 is not really going to be helping you with the visible buff effect, but can provide you that damage reduction, which is going to be stacking up with Coyote's Lance damage reduction to provide you for a total of 64% damage reduction on foe's first attack. And you can also get the damage reduction on foe's second attack in case that they have Brave Weapon or can double Harden in the enemy phase. So Speed Smoke 4 can definitely be something that he can run, and he can even run Attack Smoke 4 actually, because he is going to be fast enough. So that can provide him the follow-up negation effect, which can be helpful in the enemy phase and actually does provide him with the defense and resistance buff. So he can pretty much have the spectrum buffs with his weapon and Attack Smoke 4. So both Smoke 4 skills are pretty good for the mixed phase, and you can also use him in summoner duels with a cavalry team or just with a bunch of cavalry units, especially on a map where there are not a lot of trenches and it allows cavaliers to really dominate. And he can be run there with Pulse Smoke, which is going to be helping you against many of the pre-charged specials and also against many of the hardy fighter armors. So you can just open the way for many of the ranged cavalry units by pulsing down many of the hardy fighter far save armors. And Ruptured Sky is something that is going to be helping you against a dragon or a beast frontliner, especially Asker, if they do not have, guard skill. So Ruptured Sky can definitely help you in those matchups and can work as a pretty nice one cooldown special. At max investment, you can just double down on the clash condition from his weapon and actually use the clash skill to give him the attack and speed debuff neutralization. And for a mixed phase build like this at max investment, Speed Smoke 4 is going to be pretty nice. And Ruptured Sky again is something that is going to be helpful because you can retaliate back with it in the enemy phase, and it can also help you against many of the dragons and beast units. And many of the dragons are going to be used as a near save unit, so this can help you in many of the matchups. He can be used with a Bridal Catcher team in Aether Raids defense, like I said, so he can just provide the guaranteed follow-up attack to his cavalry allies, and then Brave Catcher can provide them with the Brave Hit, so they can essentially quad attack, and that is going to be pretty nice. And he himself can be used against many of the threats by running guard skill so that they do not really charge up their special, and he can be a bit more annoying, and you can just run Blade Session Sacred Seal to get the max offenses. If you want to optimize a bit more for Aether Raids defense, then you could use him with Attack Speed Catch 4 and Loud Speed defense. The Loud skill is going to be helping you when people do use a lot of visible buffs in the light season, and this can also help him just double attack many of the threats which are going to be naturally fast by ignoring their visible buff to their speed. And as it is, Hardin can already double many of the follow-up negation near save armors because of the guaranteed follow-up attack that he can get. And he can also use Ruptured Sky again to deal with many of the dragon near save tanks. And when you're going to be running him with a bunch of cavaliers with Note for the Pathfinder or with Duo Dagger, then you can just run Goat Cavalry skill to just help them with their offenses. Princess Nyna is a staff infantry unit, and she's the first Gen 7 healer. She's the D-mode of this banner, and she's going to be a pretty popular merge project because of her top tier art and the fact that her offensive stat spread is actually pretty good for a healer with 41 base speed, having Super Boon in it. Her attack is not really the highest at base 34, but with that speed she can definitely work, and her resistance is also pretty high at base 38 with a Super Boon, so she can always support her teammates by running sabotage skills and things of that nature. She does come with a new staff in Respite Plus, which is basically the non-seasonal version of Tannin Baton Plus. So this provides you with Drive, Defense, and Resistance 1 and the Drive Guard effect. So having the Drive Guard effect is extremely useful for supporting your tank allies, and that can free up from them running these stand skills or running Crafty Fighter, and they can just choose the other skills. So this is definitely an incredibly powerful effect, and having the staff present in the normal summoning pool is definitely pretty good. She also comes with Sabotage Speed 3, which is going to be pretty helpful so that you can just debuff the speed of many foes at the same time, especially when you're running something like a damage reduction skill. Now, when it comes to Nyna herself, she is going to be like any kind of other staff infantry unit without a preferred weapon, just waiting for an arcane staff. Because even though like she is new, she definitely has the stats going on for her, and if you compare her to like the older staff unit, she is going to be coming on top when it comes to the speed, and she's got pretty same attack as Eremia, for example, and has similar resistance to Natasha. But the thing is that at this point, you pretty much just build up your favorite healer because all of them are just going to be defined by their stats. And a newer healer like Nyna, no doubt, is going to be standing on top of that because of the fact that she's a modern unit and just has more BST. And she also does not require that many dragon flowers to reach her max stats essentially. So I hope that, arcane stuff can happen. And when it does happen, Nyna is definitely going to be benefiting tremendously from that because of her good speed. So she can definitely function well offensively and also function as a support unit. And she also brings some really amazing fodder for the healers and for supportive units. Let's start with Respite Plus. Respite Plus could be given to Elice. I think she's the best user of this staff because of Holy Ground providing the damage reduction. There is Flame of course, but her damage reduction is tied to her weapon. But that's not the case for Elice. She can just provide the damage reduction and drive guard at the same time. So she could be used in Summoner Duels as a support unit for a raid boss. Because in Summoner Duels, False Start is really not as useful as Aether Raids. So you can definitely get rid of her weapon. And this is definitely going to be pretty helpful. And you can provide even more support by running Sabotage Attack. You can also run this in Aether Raids offense to support your safe tanks. And by just doubling down on the support with like double distant guard, and someone like Linhardt can pretty much soak up like the chill resistance debuff or like the chill attack debuff with its attack and resistance. This weapon can also be used on a cavalry healer who does have good resistance, so you can pretty much use this weapon and also have the mobility of a cavalier that can help you collect the pots, because when you're going to be using the safe tanks, you don't really have the best of the mobilities, and sometimes safe tank users do struggle to collect the pots. So having this on a range cavalier would definitely help with the support and also for just getting the pots. Of course, any kind of healer can use this weapon, but having higher resistance just means that you have the option of running a sabotage skill to double down on the support. And this can also be useful in Rooker Siege, where you can, just have the drive guard effect and not let the Rooker charge up their special. So even outside of the competitive game modes, this weapon is going to be having its usage. She also provides Sabotage Spd, which was previously not easily available in the Grail pool or in the 3-star 4-star pool. So this could be run on mythics like Mila and Elice, especially Elice because she does already give the speed boost to the Astra Blessed units. So having the Sabotage Spd really helps you. And if you're going to be running Fortune Bow, then you can pretty much debuff like 3 stats. It's not the most common weapon, but it's definitely an option. Now as for using Nyna herself, you can just use her on a budget by running Fortress Resistance so that she can, use Sabotage Spd much better. And you can just use Distant Guard as a Sacred Seal or even run Phantom Resistance. So something like this is going to be useful in like limited hero battles or like Arena Assault. So the Respite support is always going to be pretty useful with that Drive Guard. But if you want to invest heavily into Nyna and not just be restricted to running Respite, then you can definitely go with Palm Staff Plus, which is easily one of the best staffs that we have got in the Grail pool, and that is easily accessible. And pretty much this entire build could be done with the help of Divine Codes, because you can get Return and Attack Speed Push 4 from Sarah. You can easily get Dazzling Staff as well. And Odd Recovery is now actually a pretty nice skill that you can get from Sephron's combat manual, and you don't really have to care about getting Tannin Baton because Respite is easily available on Nyna. So she can take the Odd Recovery as well, and this is basically a balance of providing some support to allies with Odd Recovery and the attack debuff, and also the Bomb Plus skill, while also functioning yourself in the combat with Attack Speed Push 4 and Blade Session. And the speed debuff from Palm Staff is definitely going to be pretty helpful to a fast unit like Nyna. Nyna doesn't really have the highest attack stats, so you can also depend on the splash damage from something like Serpentine Staff. And Attack Speed Ideal is going to be a better skill than the push skill because it's pretty easy to maintain the 100% HP condition on these healers with the Dazzling Staff. So you can run that for more offenses, and Serpentine Staff does have Fatal Smoke or the Deep Wounds effect built into it. So you can just easily chip down the enemy with Double Savage Blow and use this to support your allies and also spread the Deep Wounds effect. You can also run Nyna with a more premium skill and Attack Speed Finish 4. Now, just to give you an idea that Attack Speed Finish 4 does work as long as your special is charged up. So it is pretty easy to pre-charge a 1 cooldown special on an infantry unit with like Infantry Pulse Support, Duochrome, Asker. Just so many of the ways are present there. So by having your Bomb Plus skill or really any 1 turn special on these healers pre-charge, you're going to be able to use Attack Speed Finish 4 to get the healing and the true damage, which is really helpful for the offensive capabilities. And attack speed Oath 4 is also an option here which you can run, and this is going to be providing you with more offenses and also the teleportation. Attack speed Bond 4 from the Divine Codes could also be run actually when you're running an Oath 4 skill, because it does have pretty good synergy, but overall the finish skill is going to be better. You can also run the very premium Observant Staff Plus, which does provide you with +6 to all of these stats and also provides you with the Dull All effect. So when you're going to be, giving all buffs to Nyna and running bonus doubler, you're going to be able to get a lot of stats with this weapon, and you can essentially let go of Dazzling Staff and run something like Null Follow Up to double a lot of the units, which have follow-up negation effects and also function defensively better against many of the mages, because many of them do have the auto follow-up attack, and Nyna does have pretty good resistance. So something like this could be done, and again, attack speed finish 4 is going to be useful. You can also use Grand Scratcher Plus and pretty much pair it up with another supportive slotsy skill like Infantry Null Follow Up or Infantry Speed Tactic, and that could be used in Summoner duels where you can support a unit who has got like an AoE special, because usually units with AoE specials are going to be running double life and death or still water and stuff like that, so their visible attack is going to be high, so you can easily give them the attack buff with attack opening, provide them with the Infantry Null Follow Up, and also provide them with the Grand Scratcher -1 special cooldown, which is going to be helpful in pre-charging their special. You can also just go ahead and run double HP +5 and run Infantry Pulse to just provide them with like double special cooldown reduction. So that is going to be useful, and that's something that you can do, but it really depends on the AoE unit you're using and if they actually have lower HP than Nyna, because Nyna doesn't really have the highest HP to make use of that. So Grand Scratcher is always going to be useful in Summoner duels for that application, and you can also use her in Aether Raids offense as a high investment support unit with Respite Plus, as I've shown with other healers. So pretty much the same thing with Sabotage Attack and Double Distant Guard, and her resistance is high, so even without Phantom resistance, like, she is going to be able to debuff a large amount of opponents, and she can also just soak up the debuffs from Bright Shrine, for example, or Chill Resistance. And Stillwater's extra attack is actually helpful for just increasing your healing, so it's a pretty good skill compared to like Fortress Defense Rest, for example, which you could definitely run on budget, but I do like Stillwater a bit more. And you can also use her in Summoner Duels S as a raid boss support unit by running Staff of 12, which can just heal up the ally who has taken the most amount of damage in that turn, and also use Sabotage Attack to provide the debuff, and use Counter Control to make sure that units, on the opponent cannot really hit and run that easily. For example, E3 or Brave Salif and, things like that. So having Counter Control units in Summoner Duels S is definitely helpful. The more the merrier, honestly. If you can have that on every single team, that is ideal, of course, because there are so many Canto units. So if you really like Nyna and if you want to use her in Summoner Duels S, this could be possible. And finally, you can also use her in Rooker Siege with something like Melancholy Plus, for example, which is going to be just resetting their special essentially. So, her Respite Plus is useful, but some of the Rooker units do have special acceleration skills in their base kit. So in that case, Melancholy does help you, and you can just run double drive attack so that you can support your allies. Matthis is the Grandeur Battle unit from this banner, and I don't really think that he's unique enough to warrant his own video, so I'm just going to be covering him over here. He is a 179 BST Lance Cavalier with Vulture Lance Plus as the inheritable weapon. We have seen Vulture Blade and Vulture Axe, so Vulture Lance was expected, and he does have Chill Attack Defense and Rouse Defense Res 3 as well, that is present at 4-star. Rouse Defense Res was not that easily available before, so it's good to have in the Grail pool, even though it's not like the greatest skill. And when it comes to his stat spread, he does have base 43 attack and a very weird speed stat at base 32, which is not very too high, but it's also not very too low. I guess you could consider it low, but it's not like very, very low. He also has base 38 defense, which is going to be working out defensively, and has super boon in his resistance, but most people are probably just going to be going with the attack IV or defense IV when they're going to be ascending his asset. Matthis can basically be considered like a modern Orson with that stat spread. He could also be compared to Fernand, who has a pretty high attack stat but doesn't really have as much speed or defense as Matthis. But this is not the real competition when it comes to the free-to-play Lance Cavalry. It is actually the Blade Breaker Gerald and his amazing weapon Breaker Lance. So this weapon is really amazing for the support, and Gerald himself is going to be able to get the auto follow up in both phases. So even though he's slow, he is easily able to double without really requiring quick riposte. And Matthis, on the other hand, has to stack up speed, and even if he stacks up speed, it is not really going to be enough to outspeed a lot of the modern units. Speed and HP is basically the thing which he has got over Gerald, but in the end we do know that unique effects and unique weapons are going to be the ones to age better, and Gerald already is a pretty nice support unit honestly, and can function in the combat with his attack stat and the auto follow up that he can get out of his weapon. So because of these reasons, not a lot of people are going to be building up Matthis unless they really like him or they really like his art, and he is going to be waiting for an Arcane Lance so that maybe he could get an auto follow up out of that, and he's not really forced to run quick riposte to double or, stack up his speed, which is not really all that high. Matthis does provide you with a Vulture Lance, which is definitely useful for many units, and it does have good synergy with Attack Defense Menace and Attack Smoke 4, and especially if you provide some debuffing support with Sabotage Attack, Sabotage Defense, or you just run Gerald. So you can easily run, this kind of weapon with Attack Defense Menace on someone like Fallen Orson, and you can even have this on Lucas and have that with the new Quick Riposte 4. Florina is also someone who can appreciate this weapon because she can just get the attack debuffs. So that is mainly going to be the use case of Vulture Lance. It does require the unit to be solo, so not the best option for the armor units, especially when you run the safe skills. So mostly going to be useful on the infantry, flying, and cavalry units who just want to be bulky and function in both phases, or mainly in the enemy phase like Lucas and Florina. If you want to build up Matthis on a budget, then you can just give him Fury and have attack defense solo with Bonfire. If you want to invest a bit more into the Vulture Lance build with the merges and Dragon Flowers, then you can of course run attack defense Catch 4 and run attack defense Cat Sacred Seal and pair it up with attack defense Menace, which is present in the Divine Codes to get the full use out of the Vulture Lance and its debuffs. So Vulture Lance is basically like a Pelagian weapon, so having those attack and defense debuffs is going to be pretty helpful, and you can get both the Cat skill and the Neotrace skill from Fallen Gustav. Speaking of Fallen Gustav, you can also get Attack Smoke 4 from him, and that is going to be allowing you to have the follow-up negation, which is going to be helpful in the enemy phase to deny the follow-up attacks. And you could run something like Unbound Lance, for example, which does have the solo lull attack defense built into it. So this is going to be useful when you're running the attack defense Neotrace skill, and you can not only run lull attack defense at the same time, and you can also run him with like Candy Cane Plus. So this is going to be having a bit different playstyle than the Lances before, which need him to be solo. This weapon needs him to be within 2 spaces of an ally, so this is more of an enemy phase weapon that you could use with Quick Riposte 4 if you want to get that follow-up attack. And you can also run Attack Smoke 4 to deny the follow-up attacks. So Fallen Gustav is going to be pretty helpful as a fodder, like he is for many of these slower Cavaliers in general. And you can just run Candy Cane to get the guard effect, which is going to be really helpful in the mixed phase. You can also use him with a speedy build if you want to, and he can definitely run Piercing Tribute with Attack Speed Clash 4. You can also use Springy Lance, but it's kind of redundant with Attack Speed Clash 4 and its attack and speed debuff neutralization, so that's why I do like Piercing Tribute a bit more, and you can get partial null follow up out of that, which is defensive in nature. And you can run attack speed Menace as well, so that he can get fast. So you can just speed stack heavily on him to make sure that he can double attack many of the units in the player phase and in the enemy phase, even though he doesn't really have the highest base speed, and even though he can only double a lot of the modern units, this is still going to be making him pretty fast. And if you also want to, just build up a fast player phase build, then Ninja Yari Plus is an option, which we did get in the limited ephemera manuals. So this is going to be, allowing you to have the quad attacks. And when you're going to be quad attacking, you definitely need the partial null follow up with something like Flowguard, for example. And you can heal up HP by using Surge Sparrow and Luna. Princess Elice is the instant demote of this banner, so she's going to be present in the 3-star, 4-star pool, and she's not even given out as a quest reward, so it is going to be miserably hard to get the copies of her and to plus and merge her. But if you do get her, then she is going to be having pretty high attack stat at base 41, being the highest attack stat healer. And she also has super boon in that attack stat, so she can definitely function as a hard-hitting healer. But again, healers do have a lot of shortcomings in terms of the weapon, in terms of the specials. We also have Mystic Boost and also Mystic Boost 4 now, so that is always going to be annoying for the healers. But still, she is going to be having workable enough speed to be fast enough at max investment, and she's not going to be having as much resistance as Nyna, but still it is decent enough. She does come with Trilemma Plus as the inhittable staff, which for some reason was only locked to Maribel until now. So this is a pretty nice weapon that you could use to inflict the triangular depth status on the target and foes within 2 spaces of that target. And this is going to be useful in limited hero battles and in arena assault, for example. Not the best staff really, but it's definitely pretty fun. And she also has attack resistance ideal at 5-star and also has attack resistance gap 3 at 4-star. So her fodder is definitely pretty decent, especially if you want to get the staff or get the tier 3 version of the ideal skill. And when you compare her stats to the other existing healers, she's going to be the hardest hitting healer pretty much, and she's going to be having much better offenses than an older healer like Natasha, but doesn't really have as much resistance, just by a few points really. And Nyna, on the other hand, is more speedy, so it really depends on which kind of arcane staff we'll get. I hope that it's a good one, and Elice can make use out of it. So it really depends on which one you like more. Do you like more attack or do you like more speed, which Nyna has? They pretty much swap their attack and speed in a way. And Nyna does have a bit more resistance to make out of the sabotage skills, but that's pretty much it. So at the end of the day, you just pick up the healer and just build them up. So the builds are going to be pretty similar, but because of Elice having higher attack than all of the healers, there are definitely some spicy things that you can do. So if you want to run her on a budget, you could just run her with double attack res ideal and have Wings of Mercy so that she can teleport in and just heal up the HP of the allies. And if you want to invest a bit more into her, then again, Palm Staff is going to be something that you could run. And because she doesn't really have as much speed as Nyna, she does appreciate having Ideal skill over the Push skill because the Ideal does provide you with slightly more speed. So again, this is the Divine Codes build that you can run. And you can also run her with Serpentine Staff and use her in Aether Raids Chaos. So this is something that Elice actually does the best out of any kind of healer. It's not the best strategy because again, getting into Vantage range is not going to be the easiest thing because you're not going to be able to use Ardent Sacrifice or Reciprocal Aid with like Winter Bernadetta. So you're going to be depending on the hits of the enemies to hopefully not KO you and put you into the Vantage range. And Close Salvo can provide you with the extra attack in the player phase as well, and it's highly recommended you provide her the support of someone like Eliwood or Ymir so that she can fall into the Vantage range rather safely. And Serpentine Staff here with double Savage Blow is going to be helpful because you can just have the Deep Wounds effect on the enemies and just do a lot of splash damage to them. And because Elice does have high attack stat, you're going to be able to Vantage sweep a lot of them. Again, this is not the best Vantage strategy, and it's mostly doable in Chaos Season because the opponents do not really have access to the mythic buffs, and Elice does have the high attack stat, but again, she doesn't really have any kind of special other than like Miracle, which you can practically use here. So there are going to be the shortcomings of the healers, of course, and the Hardy Bearing Sacred Seal that you have to watch out for, but still this is a pretty fun thing that she can do because of having that high of an attack stat. And if you want to invest into her heavily, then Attack Speed Finish 4 is going to be a pretty good option here. And you can also run the Oath 4 skill just to get that more offenses. And again, like I explained in the Nyna section, the finish skills do work on healers. You just have to pre-charge their 1 cooldown special to get the effects out of it. You can also use her as a supportive unit but still water and just using Sabotage Attack and Respite Plus. So her attack is going to be pretty high, so she can provide a lot of healing, and healing is tied up to the attack stat of the healers, and you can also run Recover Plus to heal up a lot of HP here. And then finally, she could also be used with Observant Staff, and because she actually has a bit balanced bulk than Nyna, she could, try and run Close Reversal, especially when she's going to be stacking up a lot of stats with bonus doubler and then even more bonus doubler with Legendary Eliwood. So Observant Staff giving you +6 to all of your stats, and also the Dull All effect is definitely pretty good defensively, and then you can just run Null Follow Up, which is also really helpful defensively. So this is something I would only recommend at like absolute max investment at least. I hope you all enjoyed this in-depth analysis. If you did, then make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to pull or build up any of these units or even fodder them. And if you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, helps it tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member as well. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Vulture Lance against like Fighter. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.